I'm sitting here today with Dale Carter, mayoral candidate for Blue Springs 2020. And Dale, you have a plan for Blue Springs 2030. Tell me about that.
It was confusing at first, no doubt, because 2030 is 10 years from now. And Blue Springs 2030 was about that 10-year plan to get us to the year 2030, which will be the 150th anniversary of the city of Blue Springs.
And that's kind of a big deal.
Huge.
And when we think of Blue Springs 150 years ago, 10 years ago even, it looks a little bit different.
Well, even back to the 1970s, Blue Springs was a town of about 6,000 people. The growth came in the 80s and 90s into the 2000s, and now we're almost at 60,000.
Almost at 60,000. And that means that there's a lot of things that go on in this city that have to have some attention paid to them in order for Blue Springs to be able to handle 60,000 residents.
Certainly. You know, I tell people that the top two jobs of city government is public safety and infrastructure. Infrastructure being the roads and sidewalks, and you know, when you turn on your tap, that you get water.
And we talked a little bit about the road, Roanoke Road here in Blue Springs, and there's been a lot of progress made on that. When do you think that project's going to complete?
I was just over there the other day, and they're making excellent progress on it. And pretty soon you're going to see a very wide road that's going to go all the way to Adams Dairy Parkway.
And basically right now we're at the end of winter, hopefully, crossing your fingers. And so the chief complaints are snow removal. How well did that go this year? Potholes and all of that. And that's what you're talking about, is making sure that those things are maintained.
Certainly. And the overlay program for the roads, you know, that we spend an inadequate amount of money now. We spend $2.5 million a year on it. The same $2.5 million a year we spent 10 years ago.
And is that enough?
Not enough, not nearly enough. And certainly when we get out of winter, you're going to see the potholes emerge. They'll be out there doing that. But we need to spend more money on our roads.
And those are the things that the residents, the business owners, they expect those things to be maintained.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you're hearing that people want in Blue Springs?
Well, I mean, you always hear about roads. Roads is the number one thing that you'll see in the citizen survey. A lot of folks talk about sit-down restaurants. We don't have nearly enough of those in Blue Springs. And, you know, more and more what I'm hearing is, you know, fill up the empty buildings. I mean, as you drive around Blue Springs, you see a lot of empty buildings.
So last week you released this video that showed some of these empty buildings, and you had a really important question for Blue Springs at the end of that video, which is this
our future? And hopefully it's not. I mean, I've got a plan to turn that around, because really what's going on right now is, in the middle of a robust national economy, and an economy where Lee Summit, Independence, Grain Valley, and Oak Grove are doing very well, Blue Springs is not. And we have to ask the question, why is that?
So as I've watched you over the last couple of years and watched Blue Springs, and I have to ask the tough question, is Blue Springs really on the right trajectory that is in the best interest of the residents and the businesses that are here?
I don't think it is, which is why I'm running for mayor. I've got a plan, a 4-point plan to address that on day one, that will get buy-in from the city employees, a complete review of our board and commission structure, and also our comprehensive plan and unified development code. And then we'll take that, once we fix that and become an easier city to work with, and we'll reach out to the business community, roll out the red carpet, and say, we welcome you to Blue Springs with open arms.
So let's talk about that a little bit. When you say that a city should be easy to do business in, that means getting the buy-in from the people who work in this city. And you've got some great people that work for this city, and you're not saying in any way that they're not great employees.
No, not at all. In fact, you know, I'd like to get them more money and a better retirement plan. But in order to do that, we can't go into a fiscal budget year at a $1.3 million deficit. That's where we went into the fiscal 2020 budget.
Now, for those of us that don't really understand how city budgets work, the city budget has to be balanced, right?
Correct.
And so when you say that there was a
$1.3 million
$1.3 million deficit, that means that you had to cut things in the budget to make a balanced budget.
Well, to be clear, I'm not on the city council
Right.
at this point, but they had to cut from the budget programs and employees in order to get to that balanced number.
Okay, so right now the budget's balanced, but you had to make a lot of sacrifices as a city to make that happen.
Correct.
And so that your goal is, by influencing change and really facilitating that change, your goal is that we would have enough money in Blue Springs that those types of cuts and balancing gymnastics, if you will,
Right.
wouldn't have to happen.
Well, I mean, we live off sales tax revenue. So when you see empty building after empty building after empty building, that sales tax revenue is not flowing to the city coffers.
So why do you think that we've got buildings along 7 Highway and other parts of town that are not filled at this point?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty simple that folks who would invest in those properties look at Blue Springs and they see our history. That when you come to Blue Springs, even if you've checked every box in the comprehensive plan, there's a chance your building won't be allowed, your business won't be allowed. And so they're like, I don't know that I want to mess with that.
Because there's a lot of red tape to jump
Right.
through.
So instead of that, once they've got their Lee Summit piece and their Independence piece, now what you're seeing, and the frightening thing moving forward for our economy is they're skipping over Blue Springs, they're going to Grain Valley and Oak Grove. Those two towns are on fire right now from an economic development point of view, and we're left with a lot of empty buildings.
So the solution to that is, one, being easier to do business in.
Certainly.
Is there any particular focus that you would have on being easier to do business in?
Well, I mean, I would like to meet with the planning commissioners, okay, and let them know that their job is to read the comprehensive plan and the Unified Development Code, okay? And if you come in with a business and you've checked all those boxes, we move you right down the line.
So basically, you are suggesting that give them every reason to say yes.
Absolutely. Roll out the red carpet and maybe even develop a concierge from the city's perspective who will take that new prospective business person and walk them through all of the steps to get to fruition so that they open on time.
What does that mean for the residents of Blue Springs? We talk about a thriving economy, businesses coming into Blue Springs, being easy to do business with, all of that. But at the end of the day, every resident's out there asking the same question I'm going to ask you now. What's in it for me? What does
Right.
that mean for someone who lives here?
Well, it's twofold. I mean, one, you've got more options, more things that you can do, more places you can spend your money, restaurants you can eat in, stores you can shop in, services that you can use. But to the city, it means that we'll get sales tax revenue in to do the things that you expect us to do. Public safety, infrastructure, parks, anything that's on the want list for the citizens has got to come through the door in the form of tax revenue in one way or another.
Because the money has to come from somewhere.
Correct.
We're not the federal government that goes into a deficit in order to do things.
We're not allowed to print money.
But let's be honest here. You know, you've been on Kansas City radio a long time, and your kids are all grown.
Right.
Why now?
Yeah. I love this city. I mean, it took me in 25 years ago, educated my kids, and I want to see it do better. And I'm really concerned that we're not maximizing our potential in Blue Springs.
Do you feel like there's a shift from when you moved here 25 years ago and felt it was a progressive town and really on top of that infrastructure development? Do you feel like something's changed?
I feel like we're stepping back. I really do. There was a feeling for a long time that we were going to be a bedroom community, maybe the Missouri equivalent of Leawood. And then there were some progressive folks who came along, and you saw what happened at Adams Dairy Landing. We got all the shopping going over there and different things around town. And now all of a sudden we're stepping back. You know, we passed an ordinance on solar, which you would think we would be all over solar. And we've got the most restrictive solar ordinance in the country. It just doesn't make sense. And if anything we have that's new for Blue Springs, if I become mayor, it might be a board of common sense, that we run anything we do past the board of common sense. Does it fit?
Does it make sense?
Does it make sense?
You've talked a little bit about this leadership council that you want to put together. Tell me about that.
Well, you know, when I was a kid, I grew up in Indiana. I went to Benjamin Bosse High School, and I didn't know who Benjamin Bosse was when I was a kid, but I came to learn who he was. He was a progressive mayor at the turn of the century, from the 19th century into the 20th century. And much of what Evansville is today, the foundation was put in place by Benjamin Bosse. And he had a simple maxim: when everybody boosts, everybody wins. So if everybody is on board, we can do great things in Blue Springs. And that's where the Blue Springs Leadership Council came from. And an example that I have used is, I want to get manufacturing jobs going in Blue Springs. We started with Forcia, and I think we can build on that. Forcia is the plant that's making interiors for automobiles. We've got land to do it down Adams Dairy Parkway toward 40 Highway. And I want to involve the Blue Springs School District. That's part of the Leadership Council. Let's get the Blue Springs School District on board to produce the kind of graduates we need for that coming economy. But there are other groups too that need to have a place at the table. The Downtown Alive, the Chamber of Commerce, the fire districts, all very important parts of Blue Springs that have things going on in their areas. We have things going on in ours. Let's sit down together, let's talk about it, and let's see how we can help each other.
When you say it like that, it seems so elementary, simple as a solution.
Right.
Why isn't it done already?
Well, I mean, the mayor has his management style, and I have my management style. Mine is much more inclusive. Let's get everybody together in a collaborative manner, and let's find the best solutions moving forward. So that's how I will operate, just as I have in managing radio stations for the last 35 years, with varied talent, and egos, bringing everybody together at the table to get the best solution moving forward.
So for someone who's listening and they've never met you before, what is the one thing that you would want them to take away from having watched our conversation today?
Well, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to get what we're getting. Only worse. I mean, you're going to see more buildings that are empty, more businesses that are skipping Blue Springs. And I hate to see that. I mean, that's the kind of downward spiral that will take away tax revenue, and we're going to keep cutting. We're going to keep cutting programs. We're going to keep cutting employees. I have a plan to get us out of that.
And to be candid, you've had some people that have said, they want more green opportunities in Blue Springs. They have specific things that they
Sure.
want that are special interests, if you will. How do you fund those special interests?
Well, you fix the economy first. If we fix our economy, everything will take care of itself. And we'll listen to all those ideas, and the best ideas will be done.
So once the infrastructure is protected and the public safety is protected because the economy is doing what it's supposed to, then those things that people with special interest in town, when there's a surplus,
Right.
then there's the ability to start to investigate and discern which of those programs you want to implement.
No matter how much money we have coming in, priorities are always going to be a key. I mean, even with the budget that we have today, we can pick any one thing we want to do and we can do it. We just can't do everything.
That's a loaded statement. So let's go back to the empty buildings. You are not making a statement about why any of those businesses closed.
Nope.
But you are really focused in on what is it going to take to fill them and to attract more businesses to Blue Springs and to have an environment that is inviting for a healthy economy.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's the fair way to look at it. I mean, the business cycle is what the business cycle is. Businesses open and businesses close. I mean, what's the next step? How do we fill those businesses? And if we have the reputation in Blue Springs that we are incredibly difficult to work with, people aren't going to bring their businesses to Blue Springs. It's that simple.
And you have 4 children.
I do.
I have 5. One of the things that always was a desire for me was to have my kids live in close proximity, and I know some of yours do and some of yours don't. If you've got kids that are graduating from Blue Springs High School, what is the incentive for them to, move back to Blue Springs after college or stay in Blue Springs?
At this point, very little. And that's really where Blue Springs 2030 was born, because it was a far-reaching plan to get manufacturing jobs going. I've talked to the school district about this, because coming out of school, there are several avenues you could take. There's college, which isn't for everyone. There's the military, which isn't for everyone. And then what's the third rail? The third one is, skilled labor. And we don't have enough skilled labor jobs in Blue Springs. We can fix that.
So this is your chance. I want you to look in the camera and speak directly to the voters and tell them what you want.
Well, I want a better Blue Springs, and we can do better. The future starts now. It starts on April 7th. If we're going to implement any of these plans and affect change in Blue Springs, I'm going to need your vote on April 7th.